Today we begin the book of Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, prophet known for his doom and his difficult time that he lived in. Prophet who's accused of rage, but truth be told, it's not his rage. It's the rage of the era in which he lived. Divrei Yirmiyahu ben Chilkiyahu. Min HaKohanim asher ba'anatot be'eretz Binyamin. Jeremiah, the son of Chilkiah, one of the priests from Anatot in Binyamin. So he's a priest, which is, of course, just something to note. What is Yirmiyahu's main message going to be? We are going to fall. The temple is going to be destroyed. Think of how much harder that must have been for a priest. The people who were the stewards, the people who worked in the temple, the people who were the intermediaries, the shlichim between God and the Jewish people. And so the job of talking about the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash is given to a priest, a Kohen. Also, just another interesting thing to note, at least to me, and I'm sure there are others who say this, Anatot. Anatot, if you remember back in the book of Shmuel, we had the Kohen Eli and his horrific sons, and God said to him, you guys are going to be banished from being my priests. And eventually, King David, couple of the just generation or so later, gets rid of Eli and his descendants and sends them to Anatot. They will no longer be the high priests. And so here, maybe there's a little bit of a comeuppance. Maybe the priests weren't acting properly as will be described in this book and other books. And maybe that's a priest from Anatot, somebody whose family still would go up to the temple and would still minister, still act as shlichim, as messengers between God, emissaries between God and the Jewish people, and between the Jewish people and God. But he was not of the leading family. He was not of the high priest because he was in Anatot. Little background. There's a lot more to say, but our time is limited. Asher haya dvar Adonai elav bimei Yoshiyahu ben Amon melech Yehuda b'shlosh esrei shana lemalcha. So word came first to Yirmiyahu in the 13th year of the reign of Yoshiyahu. Remember back from the book of Melachim, who is Yoshiyahu? Yoshiyahu is the son and grandson of horrific kings, the grandson of Menashe, the son of Achaz, terrible kings who brought about idolatry. Yoshiyahu was very young when he sat on the throne, I believe 8 years old. The Torah, or parts of the Torah, were discovered in the dusty parts of the temple, parts of the Beit HaMikdash were brought to him. It talked about destruction, and he went on a quest of religious revival, destruction of idolatry, and his time period was a time period of great religious revival, of great connection once again with God, which had not been happened in a very long time. It was really a change and a transformation, and yet words to the prophet of destruction, of the future, impending destruction, are coming already, unfortunately, in the days of Yoshiyahu. I don't remember the exact year. This might be about the year 630 or so before the common year, about 40, 50 years before the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, will ultimately be destroyed. Vayhi bimei Yehoyakim ben Yoshio melech Yehuda ad tom ashtei esrei shana letzidkio ben Yoshio melech Yehuda ad glot Yerushalayim b'chodesh hachamishi. And his prophecy, which started then, continued into the days of Yehoyakim, the son of Yoshio, and continued until the 11th year of King Tzidkiyahu, the son of Yoshio. If you remember what happens, Nebuchadnezzar comes into Yerushalayim because Yehoyakim rebels against him, Yoshiahu's son. He then he removes Yehoyakim, he brings him back to Bavel. He places Yehoyakim's brother as king, who he thinks is going to be not rebel against him because he's a puppet. He's been installed there by King Nebuchadnezzar of Bavel, the empire of the area, who eventually does rebel, and Tzidkiyahu then is later killed by the Babylonians. And so Yirmiyahu reigns from this time of hope, revival, decency, morality, goodness to God during the days of Yoshiyahu, all through the destruction, which comes in the 5th month, as we, of course, know, on what we call Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the month of Av, which is the 5th day starting from the month of Nisan. Okay, Vayhi dvar Adonai elai lemor. So Yirmiyahu says, God came to me. And what did God say to me? V'terem etzarcha v'beten yidaticha, u'v'terem teitze merechem hikdashticha, navi lagoyim nitaticha. Before I created you in the womb, I selected you. Before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet concerning the nations, which is a very difficult statement, so hard to understand. How is it that somebody attains a rank of prophecy? And books have been written. We talked about it back in the book of Yeshaya at one point. The Rambam tries to give, the ways, what you need to achieve, how to tap into the messages of God so you can become a prophet. What was the training that was necessary when Shmuel was studying with, was given over to the temple and was with Eli, the priest, in the beginning of the book of Shoftim, or when Shmuel had his prophetic academies. Here, Yirmiyahu doesn't seem to have to do anything to get this job. God, for whatever reason, selects him before he has shown any qualities whatsoever. Va'omar, Adonai Elohim, hino lo yatati daber ki na'ar anochi. And when God said this to me, I said to him, God, I don't know how to speak. I'm a boy. I'm a nothing. I'm a fool. Nar in Yiddish means a fool. I don't think it means a fool here, but I'm a nobody. I'm a nar. I'm a little kid. Why would you give me such a responsibility? Vayomer Adonai Elai, Al Tomar Nar Anochi. Don't say that you were just a young man. Ki al kol asher shalachacha telech, ve'et kol asher atzavcha tidaber. Don't say you're just a boy, because wherever I will send you, you will speak. Whatever I tell you to do, that's what you're going to do. You're going to say those words. And we, of course, have here a little bit of a connection with Moshe. When God comes to Moshe, and Moshe says, Arel Shvatayim, my lips, I can't speak properly. Now, Yirmiyahu doesn't say, I stutter, or I'm not a people person, or whatever those words mean when Moshe says that that he has trouble speaking, public speaking, whatever it might be. He gives another reason, but as to his inability to speak, his inability to address the crowds, and God says, no, that's not what's going to happen. And in verse 8, God continues and says, Al tira mipneihem, ki itchani lahatzilecha ne'um Adonai. Don't be scared, because I'm with you to deliver you. I'll take care of you, so says God. And that's strange. What do you mean? Well, if we think back maybe to Eliyahu, we can understand. Eliyahu was threatened by Achav, by Izebel, who had to go and to hide the purge of the prophets. And this shows that the prophecy that Yirmiyahu is going to be given is not going to be hailed and loved. It's going to put him into trouble. It's going to put him into very, not just precarious, but dangerous positions. Because God's saying to him, don't be scared. That is to say, you will have reasons to worry. What you are going to say is not going to be to a receptive audience, and you will be threatened. And God says, but I'll be there to save you. Unlike Jerusalem, which of course Yirmiyahu is going to say is going to be destroyed. Yeshaya, we just finished his book. He talked a lot about destruction, a lot about terrible things that are going to happen. But Jerusalem, he said, didn't talk about the destruction of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was saved during his days. Talked about so many times during the days of Chizkiyahu when Sancheirav made his siege around Jerusalem. But Yeshaya and Chizkiyahu's faith in God, Jerusalem is saved. That's not the message of Yirmiyahu. His message is one of there is going to be a cleansing, a destruction, has to start again. Continuing verse 9, Pasuk Tet, Vayishlach Adonai Yado Vayaga al pi, Vayomer Adonai Elai, Hine natati dvarai beficha. And God reached out his hand and touched my mouth. Think of, it's not finger to finger, but it's hard not to think of the Sistine Chapel, right? God touched my lips, my mouth, and said, I have placed words in your mouth. I am protecting your mouth. I am there to support your mouth. I am the one who's going to give these words for you to say. Re'eh, hifkadeticha hayom hazel agoyim v'amamachot, lintosh v'lintots, ulahavid v'laharos, livnot v'linto. And I am pointing you on this day over the nations and kingdoms, not just Israel. And eventually later in the book, most of it's going to be to Yerushalayim, to Israel, to the Jews in the diaspora, to the Jews in Israel. But also he's going to also have prophecies, as we also saw in the book of Yeshaya. There it was earlier in the book, and this book is going to be a little later in the book, prophecies concerning other nations. And so you're going to talk, I'm going to give you prophecies to uproot, to pull down, to destroy, to overthrow, to build, and to plant. Vayir Devar Adonai Elai Lemor, Ma ta ro'eh Yirmiyahu. And God says to Yirmiyahu, what do you see? This is, I guess, sort of rhetorical question if God asks it, but it seems to me it's sort of like a test. Right? We don't know what it means for prophecy to come from God to a person. Was it spoken? Was it symbols? It's unclear. We don't know what it means, other than it was sort of, the way it's described is this overpowering experience other than Moshe, who was like we were talking to a regular person. All the other prophets were sort of overpowered, and they weren't in their regular faculties. Remember way back when we talked in the book of when Shaul was chasing after David, and David ran to Shmuel, and Shaul hears that David is with Shmuel, and Shaul runs after him, and as Shaul gets near Shmuel, he then once again prophecy overtakes him, and it says that he was naked on the floor receiving prophecy from God. It overtook him. He's a king. What do you mean he's naked on the floor? That seems that seems not very regal, not very royal, not the way a king should act. But prophecy overtakes you. We don't understand exactly how God communicates, but somehow here it seems like it's a test. God asks Yirmiyahu, what do you see? And we'll see a lot more of that in the book of Zechariah, where God will over and over again ask Zechariah what he sees. And what does Yirmiyahu say? Va'omar, and I said, Makel shaked ani roeh. I see a branch of an almond tree. Sounds good. Vayomer Adonai Elai, Hetafta lirot. That's good what you saw. Ki shoked ani al dvari la'asoto. So the word shaked here, which in the first verse meant a almond, now God says it to mean what? He says, you've seen right, because I will be shoked. I will make certain, I will for sure make it happen that what I'm going to say is going to occur. Right, you've seen he sees the word shaked here. You've seen the almond tree; they blossom quickly before the other trees, is the way that Rashi understands it. And this way, what I'm telling you is going to happen quickly. A second time, God asked me, "What do I see?" And I said, "I see a steaming pot." It's like Hamlet, right? I see a steaming pot. Is it Hamlet or Macbeth? Macbeth, I think. I see a steaming pot tipping away from the north. I'm sorry, I don't know Shakespeare very well. Vayomer Adonai Elai, mitzafon tifatach hara al kol yoshvei haaretz. Why do you see a pot tipping away from the north? Because from the north, that is where destruction will come to all the inhabitants of the land. Because I'm summoning all of the northern people. Because all the kingdoms of the north, they're going to come and they're going to set up throne before the gates of Jerusalem, right? There's be a major siege. They're going to have all their armies there against all its walls and all the towns. And I will argue my case against them. That is to say, my case against Bnei Yisrael, Asher Azavuni, who left me by worshiping and right, offering incense to other idols, and worshiping the work of their own hands. So, right, be strong, gird your loins, and speak to them. Everything that I command you. Don't be scared of them. How can he not be scared of them? Telling them destruction is going to happen. Lest I break you before them. Right? You're going to be delivering tough messages. You need me in your corner, Yirmiyahu. So listen and do what I tell you. It's not going to be easy. I'm making you this day, not Jerusalem, as was said in the book of Yeshivas. Jerusalem will be strong, it will be fortified. I'm making you, Yirmiyahu. You're a fortified city. You're an iron pillar. You're the bronze walls. It's against for Judah's kings and officers and against its priests. It's difficult verse to understand. The way I understand is that what Yirmiyahu's message is, yes, destruction is going to happen, but he's also going to have messages that there is going to be a future. Bnei Yisrael is going to survive. So you are going to give that message that, yes, this destruction is going to happen. The temple is going to be destroyed. But you're saying to them, yes, while these things will happen, there is a future. You are the Chomat Barzel. You are representing the idea of things that will last, that there's strength, that they're not going to be destroyed, that it will continue our people. V'nilchamu elecha. And they will attack you. And we will see this. V'lo yuchlu lach. But they will not be able to defeat you. Because I am there to save you. And if we think of it in a sense, it's like a metaphor. If Yirmiyahu listens to God, God says, I will be there for you. Unlike the rest of the people who are not listening to God. And thus God is not going to be there to protect them from their enemies. Yirmiyahu is given here a very difficult mission. A mission that maybe nobody could prepare for. And that's why it's almost saying, like, this is what you were born to do. You can't be trained to do this. You can't be trained to chide. I mean, there are a lot of people who like to chide and like I like to tell everybody else what they've done wrong. But this is not something that like Moshe goes and he saves the Jews being beaten up by the Egyptian taskmaster, and he protects the daughters of Yitro. And God says, oh, "Okay, this guy is a good guy. He cares about the plight of the unfortunate, the plight of the abused. So he's a good guy to go and to help the abused, the people of Israel." Yirmiyahu, you can't train to do this. I mean, I guess you can, but right, God, the message that you're going to be giving Yirmiyahu, it has to be sort of like genetically, you have to be able to do it. It's not something that I can train you to, and therefore, before you were born, I already said that this is what you're going to do. It's still going to be difficult, but I will protect you, and you will be saved despite all this. And Yirmiyahu, ultimately, while you're not seeing it this way, ultimately, in many ways, what are you going to be for the future? Why is the book of Yirmiyahu in the Tanakh? Why is the book of Eicha still in the Tanakh? Because yes, the destruction happened, the destruction occurred. Ultimately, the book is not just about destruction. It's saying that the Jewish people will go through the destruction. It will not be the end of our people. There will be a return, as Yirmiyahu says. Back at the end, second to last verse in the book of Eicha, right? God, return us to you, return towards us, and we will return to you. And so Yirmiyahu's message is there will be destruction, and it will be harsh, and it will be quick, and it will be fierce. But after that, there will eventually be a return. The destruction will not remain forever. And that's a message that Yirmiyahu gives ultimately, and one that unfortunately our people know all too well due to the many difficulties that we have experienced over our history.